I've been looking forward to doing this. When I was talking to Matt about a couple 2-3 months back, I was like, "Do you think I might be able to grab the QB?" And he goes, "Yeah, probably." So let's just,
Yeah,
we'll
absolutely,
hope for
man.
it. But yeah, man. So thank you for taking some time.
Yeah, of course.
Um,
Dude, is that what is that? Is that an old school Canucks hat you got on there, or what is that?
yeah, it's an old school. Well, I guess it's kind of old school.
Well, old is new, new is old. Yeah.
It's getting there, yeah. But yeah, I mean, I grew up here, right? So I was a fan of the Canucks and the Lions and the Whitecaps and everything, right? So,
Awesome.
how do you feel the season's been going so far?
I mean, you look at it, it feels about like our record is. I mean, 2-2. Um, having played 3 games on the road, honestly, and with a brand new staff, brand new team, and having the 20 months off or so, it feels about like that. Some good, some bad, right? Like
Right,
we still have a lot of room for improvement for sure.
pretty
Uh,
early.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's weird because it's like Labor Day, right? Like we just got done with the Labor Day Classic games and all that, which is generally when you kind of know who the contenders are and who aren't, all that kind of stuff. And it's like you feel this like push for playoff positioning. That's still kind of the case, but it's weird because we're only a month into the season, right? With the push, the delayed start and all that kind of stuff. But
Right.
yeah, man. I mean, I feel like we have some really good stuff that we've done. I feel like we're going to be a really good team, but we still got a ways to go for sure.
And so with Redblack coming up this weekend, who are some of the few players that you want to make sure to shut these guys down?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do because they've certainly had some turmoil, if you will, on their team. Matt, people were kind of, Matt Nichols, their starting quarterback, is a good friend of mine. I think
Oh, is
he's
he? Nice.
yeah. I mean, we played together in Edmonton and things like that, and he's a great
Nice.
guy, and I think he's a great player too. I think that they have a lot of things that they've kind of struggled with on their team, but people were, media and fan base and stuff like that were talking about giving Dominique Davis a chance, and he came in. I don't know if it was late in the first or in the second quarter in their game against Montreal last week, and they ended up getting some touchdown drives and things like that. So it's hard to say. Like I assume that they're probably going to go with Dom to start the game, but I don't really know.
Right.
So if that's the case, he presents a little bit different challenge than Matt Nichols does because he's more of a mobile quarterback. And so, those guys, Matt's a great passer, but Dominique is way more mobile. So it's like if he extends the play, that presents some challenges and things like that. So you kind of got to prepare a little differently. And that's their offense. I'm more concerned about their defense, of course,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Because I'm not going to be on the field when their offense on the field. So, I'll leave that to our defense to take care of that business. But their defense is another kind of question mark in the sense that they've had a ton of injuries over the last 2 weeks. Like they started out the first 2 weeks of the season playing really, really good football. Benavides obviously is a guy that Vancouver and BC Lion fans know very well as their defensive coordinator, and I know him really well. And he had those guys playing great the first couple of weeks, and then it was like right before we played them, they had like this devastating amount of injuries in their secondary, and then they had some more injuries before their game against Montreal. So they've kind of been shuffling the deck a little bit. They got a good defensive line, they got a good linebacking crew, and their secondary can be good. It's hard to have continuity when you have all these injuries and things like that. So for us, it's more about worrying about what we do and making sure that we just are efficient. Our challenge this year has kind of been finishing in the red zone. We've moved the ball really well, but we need to finish with touchdowns and not field goals. So that's going to be our main focus for sure.
Yeah. And you play just a little bit better when it's like you say, you know the guy you're going up against. Is like somehow there's just a little
Yeah,
bit,
I think so. Yeah, there's familiarity there, of course. The same as on the flip side of it, though. Like Benny knows me really well too, right? So you're
Right.
not going to like surprise him with anything, But we spent 3 years in Edmonton, and my first 3 years in the CFL in BC practicing against each other every single day, right? So we played a lot of football against each other, maybe just not on game day. So this is a little bit different, But he's going to be fired up, I'm sure, coming back to Vancouver to play, and he's
Oh,
going to have
totally.
guys amped up and ready to go. And they didn't have the greatest game last week, so they're going to have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder to try to make amends and things like that. So again, stuff that we can't really concern ourselves with. We just got to focus on ourselves. It's
Yeah.
so early in the season. We're such a new team that it's like, man, we just got to worry about what we do.
Yeah, true. And it's cool as you progress through, as a kid through to high school and college and, get to the NFL. We'll talk about that in a sec, and the CFL. And I'm curious, like, what is your first football memory?
Oh, yeah. I know exactly what it is. So I've been playing football since I was like 6 years old. My dad coached. I have an older brother who was playing before me, right? So um I was kind of allowed to play a little bit younger than most kids because who's going to sign the permission slip? Well, the dad's the coach. He doesn't care.
Right.
He'll take the responsibility if I get hurt. But I was the starting quarterback of the C team. So we had this thing called grid kids that we played, and it was like A, B, and C team. A was the oldest, B was the middle, C was the youngest, and that was all prior to like middle school. So I was the starting quarterback of the C team, but the starting quarterback on the A team, so two age groups above me, had gotten hurt. And so my dad was like, well, what the hell? I guess you'll just play for both teams. And so C
Nice.
team always played first, and then the A team played right afterwards. And so I remember like playing the game for the C team and then running over the sideline. My mom would have like a hot dog from the concession stand, and I would crush that and like maybe a bottle of water, and then I'd run back onto the field and start playing for the A team. So it was like it's just what it was. It was kind of a normal thing for us. Was just if you can walk, you can play, and so that's kind of what we did.
And so at what age are you like, maybe I can go all the way?
Oh, probably when I was 6. I probably
Nice.
thought that. I mean, I remember watching NFL games on Sundays. And for whatever reason, like Dan Marino was my favorite player. I love the way he played, but like I think I just liked the Dolphins too. They had cool
Yeah.
colors. I mean, I'm growing up in Washington State, which is about as far away from Miami as you could possibly get in the United States, and yet I was like a massive Dolphins fan. And I just remember watching NFL games on Sundays and thinking like, man, this is what I want to do. And we played all the time. I have two brothers, and we had some good friends that lived in the neighborhoods. We're always playing like backyard football. I remember like we were playing in the wintertime, but then we get snow every once in a while. We'd be out in the backyard playing football. My best friend growing up, Garrett Neer, he lost a tooth, and we found it like embedded in one of our shoes. Like we were playing football and it got knocked out and like ended up in the rubber sole of a shoe. So it's like
Nice.
football was always a part of everything. So I thought from a very young age that I was going to play pro football. I mean, I think probably every little kid that plays sports thinks that, but that
Right.
was just kind of always my goal and my plan was to play pro football, in some capacity.
And so which is harder? They always compare. You've played with the Seahawks, played the Rams, the Packers, and Steelers. Of course, the
Yeah.
Eskimos or the Elks now.
Yep.
Uh, Lions a couple times now.
Yeah.
Which is the harder one? Because I
I
mean,
mean, it's two totally different games, right? Like,
right, big time.
as similar as they are totally different. And I've seen guys, come up to the CFL that, get cut in training camp because they just can't really grasp the game or figure it out. And you think to yourself, like, okay, they're not a very good player. And then they, 6 months later, you see them, they're on a roster in the NFL and playing.
Mm,
And likewise, I've seen some of the guys that are the greatest players that I played with in Canada get an opportunity in the NFL and get released in training camp. So it's a different game. Some things translate very similarly, and some things don't. Quarterbacking is in my opinion, a much different game in the CFL than it is in the NFL. With our field being bigger, there are different throws that you have to make that you aren't even a throw in the NFL. But with the NFL field being smaller, and for the most part, the guys being a little bit faster in the NFL, the windows are much tighter and things like that. So, and timing is much more important. It's important in the CFL, but it's I guess king in the NFL. And then there's just some of the mobility stuff, some things that we do in the CFL that offenses are doing here. 2 years later, you see them ending up in the NFL. Like everybody talks about this like RPO thing, run pass option. We've been doing that since before I came into this league in the CFL. And like, this is something that just started happening in the NFL like 4 or 5 years ago.
right.
And everybody in the NFL thinks like, or in America thinks like, wow, this is like this new invention. It's like, no, we've been doing that forever up here, so, and then again, like defensive linemen have to be a yard off the line of scrimmage. So it's like some guys that are really good in the CFL Cam Wake ends up being one of the best players in the NFL for a long period of time. But then there's other guys that are great in the CFL that wouldn't be able to play in the NFL. And then you get other guys again, like you got guys that get cut and come up to the CFL and they don't even make it to the regular season. So definitely amazing players in both leagues, incredible respect to both leagues. Again, if some of the best athletes in the world are in the NFL, but some of the best athletes in the CFL aren't far behind either. So.
Right. You're not running for a politician, are you?
I just don't want to get.
That's a pretty good answer.
I don't want to get beat up in my own locker room.
That's a pretty good answer. Talk about your pregame, your ritual. What's your pregame?
Yeah, that has changed over the years. I mean, I've been doing this for a while now. So 11 years in the CFL and 13 as a pro. And then of course, college, so over the years I've adapted and changed. When I was younger, I felt it very important to get to the stadium super early, like be out on the field early, doing my own warm up, running laps around the field, getting a bunch of extra throws in and stuff like that. And it's funny because like I see, our young guys like Nathan Rourke doing that exact stuff now. Whereas for like the last 4 or 5 years, I don't care about that. I show up, I sit in the locker room, relax, hang out, maybe lay on the floor and listen to some music and foam roll or something like that. Like, I don't even go out to throw until we do pat and go in like, an hour before the game. Whereas I used to be out there like 3 hours before and stuff like that. So it's interesting. Like, and I have 2 little kids, right? And my wife and girls are always in town on home games. So my home game, ritual is a little different than my road game ritual. On the road, we're just, you're in a hotel, and with COVID, like I'm in my own hotel room. I don't even have a roommate anymore. So it's like, I could just like lounge in my bed all day long and not, just keep the drapes closed and it's just like pitch black. It's like a cave and I'm just like sleeping until 10 minutes before I got to be on the bus. At home, it's a little different. Like I'm playing dad and like trying to entertain the kids and stuff, and then get to the stadium. So it's changed over the years. But the most important thing for me is just making sure that when I get to the stadium, I'm not rushed. I like to get to the stadium early. Like I said, I don't do anything when I get there. Maybe get a massage from the trainers or something like that. Some guys are super weird. Like they have these like rituals that have to be the exact same. They're superstitious and all this stuff.
Yeah.
I don't really care. I've learned over the years that like some stuff that I was like, I have to do this, and like it doesn't happen. And you like play one of your best games. You're like, wait a minute, what's going on here?
That's the new ritual.
Sometimes you forget to do something and you just stink to join up and you're like, oh my God, it's because I do this. You're like, no, it has nothing to do with that. So now anymore, it's just like, I'm the old man in the locker room that's like got my headphones in, so I don't have to listen to the new music, and I can just put on some 70s and just get after it.
Nice. All right. I want to respect your time. I want to plow through a bunch of BC Lion fan questions.
Yeah, let's do it.
Brent wants to know about the best and worst locker pranks you've been involved in.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I mean, there's so many good ones. Most of them aren't even really appropriate for me to like talk about. So, we used to do like leaners in Edmonton all the time. Like we had these like top shelves of the locker that would open up, they would fold up. And so anytime that like somebody would be upset with somebody else, they like put like a big old bucket of water in there and lean it so that when they come in, they'd open up their locker, just on them. I saw, guys doing leaners, like a 55-gallon garbage can leaner of water at the hotel during training camp. Like guy opened his door and it just got like, just blasted him with water. So that was always a fun one. Guys would like baby powder people's entire locker rooms or locker areas. So they come in, like a rookie screws something up, the phantom comes in to visit them, and all of a sudden like every piece of clothing that they have is just covered in baby powder. And then you go out to practice, you see them like, we're going through warm-ups, the guy's doing like high knees, and it's just like every time his foot hits the ground, just like baby powder's bursting out of everything. I've seen guys, they'll soak guys' stuff in water and then put it in the freezer, and then a couple minutes before practice, like put it in their locker so it's just like stiff as a board. And what are you going to do? I wasn't a part of this one, but I did hear one time a couple years before I got to Edmonton, one of the rookies pissed a veteran off. And while they were at practice, they had a local, like, towing company that the guy knew, had buddies with, come and put his car up on cinder blocks and take his tires and leave. And they didn't put him back on for like a week. So there's always interesting
Awesome.
stuff going on. But those are fun, but probably more
Yeah.
the tame ones that I can't really repeat.
The best ones you can't tell you.
Yeah, that's right.
Greg says, ask him what he thought about the no fans in the stands and the fake crowd noise during COVID.
Man, that was weird. I think they did the best they could in all these different leagues. Like, they had the NBA with like the digital screens that had like fans and stuff on the screens.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, pumping the fake crowd noise in, NFL games and stuff like that. And then it was also weird because different states had different reopenings. And so like some of the games in Florida had actual fans,
people. Yeah.
didn't, which similarly here, like, in Vancouver, we have like a cap of how many people can be at the games. And then, you go to Regina, it's like a sellout there and it's just like packed. So, I think the leagues are doing the best they can. It was weird for sure. It's like something I don't ever want to have to go back to, is like watching live sports with like empty stadiums and fake crowd noise and stuff like that. But it would have been, I think, more weird to have it just be silent. Like, we've had scrimmages or stuff like that in the past that have been closed to the public. In Edmonton, we'd be in Commonwealth and there'd be nobody in the stands. And like, we're trying to like have a game atmosphere. And even then we would like pump crowd noise in at speakers.
Oh, nice.
Just to make it seem somewhat more realistic. But yeah, otherwise it just seems like a scrimmage. So, I don't know. It was, again, certainly looking back on it, like, it doesn't seem that weird now, but like back at the time, I was like, what the hell is this? This is weird times we're living in, for sure.
It is weird. Yeah, for sure. Sam wants to know, what's your best Grey Cup story?
Whew, man, again, most of those can't be repeated, but I will say this. So one of my good buddies of mine that I played a lot of football with, very large man, with a very large beard. We spent that whole year together, eating on the road and everything like that, going, getting keg steaks the night before the game and stuff like that. So we win the cup in Winnipeg, and we go back to Edmonton a day or two. The next morning, we're there for, I don't know, 4 or 5 days. I had to leave. I probably would have died. I was having too much fun. I needed to get back home. But
right.
We had we didn't do like a parade. We did like a big whatever you want to call it, massive gathering at the square downtown. And so they had us meet at the stadium, and they had all the buses sitting there waiting for us to take us to the party, whatever you want to call it. And so I walk into the locker room, and I had grown a beard out too. And my buddy's staring at me, and he is clean shaven, and he looks like a totally different man. And he points at me, and he was like, "I told you when we got back, no beards allowed." And I was like, "I don't know what you want me to do about that." And he just grabbed me, marched me into the bathroom, handed me a razor, an electric razor. And he towers above me, he's standing behind me, staring at me in the mirror. And as I'm shaving my beard off, he's got a bottle of Fireball, and he's hooked it underneath my arm and is pouring it down my throat. And so I stayed nice and warm during that festivities, but it was definitely forced upon me by a much larger man. So that was
yes.
time.
That's awesome. Steve's got a great question. Which players from the current Lions roster would you not want to play against?
Well, I mean,
that already.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a number of them. I think we have a lot of great players. Burnham, you don't ever want to play against Burnham because he's always going to make some amazing catches and like create momentum. I mean, I played against him for a number of years, and I used to watch him just catch like dig routes over the middle in traffic, and just, these amazing diving catches and things like that. Now that I play with him, I would never want to have to play against him. The same thing with, Lucky Whitehead. He's been a great addition for us, but he's just a headache for people to cover because he's not just speedy, which he is, but he also runs great routes. So again, a lot of guys I have played against. I've played with and against Gary Peters, and I think he's a very good player. Marcus Sales was a guy that I tried to recruit big time to get to come to BC. because I didn't want to play against him anymore. I wanted to play with him.
Right.
So definitely those guys, for sure. All of our guys in the secondary, man, are very good. Even our young guys to the field are great players. I play against them every single day at practice. But the game breakers are the guys that really piss you off. And I don't really concern myself much against the defensive guys. It's when I'm on the bench and I can't do anything about it, and I see another guy on a different team making these plays. That's why, like I said, like Burnham and Whitehead and guys like that are guys that I'm glad they're on our team. I don't want to have to play against those guys.
Mm-hmm. Michael, I'd love to keep you for a few more minutes. I want to plow through some stuff to kind of get to know you beyond what you're obviously known for football and sports, pro sports and stuff. What was the music like in the Reilly house as a kid growing up? Like, what are your parents playing?
Man. It was like country music. Every time that we'd be in the van, we had this big van that my mom would be driving around, taking us to all the different errands that she had to run. It'd always be like, Garth Brooks and George Strait and stuff like that playing. Like, honestly, now if you turn on like old school, and I say old school, like 90s country, on the radio, I could probably sing every single song. Not well, of course, but I at least know the lyrics to just about every single song. From that generation. My dad always listened to, Willie and the Boys, the Four Horsemen, stuff like that. And so that's what we would go on. Like, me and my dad would go on a 2-hour drive to Bluewood to go skiing, every weekend in the wintertime. And we were always listening to like Waylon Jennings, like all the time. And so again, I can still probably repeat just about every one of those lyrics. So that's what we listen to.
Yeah, dude, that kind of becomes like almost it's comfort music at that point.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's not what I listen to now, but I do have that music downloaded on my phone. And I never really search for it, but every once in a while I'll put it on shuffle, and one of those songs will pop up, and you don't skip past it. You just kind of listen to it because it's just
so good
from your childhood, right? So
yeah. So where did you grow up?
Kennewick, Washington. So for people that are, probably more familiar with like the WHL team, the Tri-City Americans, that's from my hometown.
Okay. So what was your first concert?
Oh, my first concert, actually, I never went to a concert when I was a kid growing up. I went to a Pearl Jam concert. It was my first concert. It was awesome. It was at the Gorge. So I went to Central Washington University, and in Ellensburg, and it's maybe, I don't know, 45 minutes to an hour drive to get to the Gorge in George. And it's an awesome venue. It's like, I don't know if you've ever been to it. But it's kind of like in this canyon that like overlooks, this drop down to the river and everything like that. It's just awesome.
Yeah, it's like just a natural amphitheater.
Yeah, it's very cool. So I went there when I was in college. I don't know, freshman, sophomore year to taking a Pearl Jam concert. It was awesome.
Which when you find time, which TV shows are you watching? What are you binging right now?
Good question. Again, there's a number of them. Like Apple TV just came out with season 2 of C that has Jason Momoa, I believe is the guy's name, the guy from the Game of Thrones. He's called Drago in that, and that's been pretty cool. My wife and I watch Chicago Fire. There's like a million seasons of like Chicago Fire, Chicago Med, Chicago PD. So we're like kind of going through that phase right now. I'm trying to think we binged, neither of us had been on Game of Thrones at all. And so we binged through that whole thing at one point in time. But yeah, C is the one that's out right now that like we're waiting each week. What is it? Ted Lasso? Haven't watched it yet, but I've heard amazing things about it. So I think that's like next on our to-do list.
Yeah, that's Jason Sudeikis.
Yeah. I mean, I felt like, I randomly, it's not like on my TV all the time, but like he was on like the Ellen DeGeneres show, and I was just like passing past the TV, and like I stopped and watched like 20 minutes of it because he was just he was in his element. So I got to check that show out.
He just seems like one of those guys like you just have fun hanging with him.
Oh, no question. You gotta have some.
So likable.
It'd be a great time. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right, dude. I'm going to respect your time. I'll ask you one last question. It's an oddball question.
Okay, perfect.
Have you ever had a near-death experience? And not necessarily, where you're flying over your body or whatever. Holy crap, I should have died there.
Yeah. Yes, I have. It was so when I was in high school, I was out at a friend's house who lived not that far. And so I grew up in Washington, but I graduated from high school in Montana. We moved there midway through my junior year. So I was in Montana. I think it was my senior year of high school. And I was driving home from a buddy's place. It wasn't super late, but it was like late fall. And so it was already dark out, maybe like 7 or 8 o'clock. But it was this like massive windstorm, like one of those ones where you see like these big trees completely swaying and everything like that. And there's lightning and thunder and all this kind of stuff. And it wasn't that long of a drive. It was like 10-minute drive to get back to my house. And I'm on 2 Mile Drive, which is like very close to where my parents' house is. And I'm within 30 seconds of being home. And as I'm driving down the road, a tree blows over into the middle of the road. I'm going, 40 miles an hour, maybe, the speed limit, whatever it was. But it's got a fork in the trunk, and it hit right as my car drove through it, and my car went through the fork in the tree. And so 1 second I'm driving, the next second I'm like on an incline sitting there. For some reason the airbag didn't go off, but because I think it just went right through the fork, but the trunk came through the windshield and was just inches from my face where I stopped. And so I had glass all over me. I had like leaves and stuff. I mean, I had no idea what the hell's going on here. I'm like sitting in my car. There's a tree in my car. And so, I took a minute to like compose myself, and I was able to open the door still. And I like shimmied out from the car and looked at it. And I was like, this is back. I'm in high school. We don't have cell phones yet.
Yeah.
I'm right. Like they existed, but not in the capacity they do now. So I just like grabbed my keys and I just jogged home. It was like, like a 2-minute jog. So I like run through the backyard, and the back slider's locked, and my parents are sitting in the dining room, like talking to each other. I'm like knocking on the door, and I got like tree branches. Like, I got some like cuts on my face. I'm like bleeding, and my mom is like, "What the hell is going on?"
Here?
Like, so I tell them, and we get in their car and we drive out of the neighborhood and down the street. And when we pulled up to where it was, my mom, like, because she was like, I was trying to explain it to her. I don't think they really understood what I was saying. But when we got there and like she saw it, she just like broke down and started like crying. She was like amazed that I wasn't dead. It was the craziest experience that I've had, and it was super weird. But yeah, it was like a cool story the next day of school.
Of course, man, for the rest of your life.
High school, you don't really think much of it, but looking back on it, I'm like, wow, that was crazy. So yeah.
And most people have a story too.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it makes you honestly, you sit there and realize, like, how precious and fragile everything is. You obviously, I don't want to be one of those people that like sits in and shelters themselves because you're scared of everything, but at the same time, you just, take some appreciation for the day that you have, because you can look back on it and go, man, one thing could have gone differently and I wouldn't be here right now. So
big time.
Sure. Yeah.
Big time. Michael, thank you again for taking some time. You're easy to find online. You're Reichster13 on Twitter.
Right. Yeah.
Are you on Instagram as well?
I think I have an Instagram. I've never used it. I think either Emily or one of the Edmonton or BC, somebody like set it up for me, and I've never actually used
that's
it.
it.
So like, but I think somebody else like made a Mike Reilly Instagram years ago, because like people were like, oh, I followed you on Instagram, you got like a couple thousand followers, and I was like, no, it's definitely
no, it's not me.
So
awesome.
But yeah, Twitter, and even then Twitter, like I don't use a lot during the football season, but during the off season I try to get on there and
jump on, say hey.
So yeah, it's just there's just too many things to be distracted by, as it is during a football season, that I just try to limit that stuff. But
right.
But I think it's a great way, for people to interact with each other too, though. So I'll get on there every once in a while.
Awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time and joining us during mid-season.
Yeah, of course.
And I guess we'll see you online and on the field.
Awesome. Sounds great. Thanks for having me on, man. It was definitely a pleasure.